police officer finds little girl unconscious in the woods. When he looks down, he sees something that would change everything. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The autumn leaves crunched beneath Daniel McCree's boots as he walked his usual patrol route through the pinewood forest. At 58, retirement hadn't suited him well. These volunteer forest patrols were the only thing that gave his days structure since hanging up his sergeant's badge 3 years ago. "Just me and you today," he murmured to a cardinal that hopped along a nearby branch, its bright red feathers a stark contrast against the golden-brown forest. His voice sounded rough from disuse. Days could pass without Daniel speaking to another soul, his modest house on the outskirts of town as quiet as the forest itself. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees when something unusual caught his eye. A flash of faded blue fabric where there should have been only browns and greens. Daniel paused, his old instincts suddenly alert. 27 years in law enforcement had taught him to notice things out of place. "Hello," he called, moving carefully toward a fallen oak tree. "Forestry Service, anyone there?" A small whimper answered him, so faint he almost missed it. Daniel rounded the massive trunk and froze. There, half hidden among the gnarled roots, sat a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, with tangled brown hair and enormous eyes that dominated her dirt-smudged face. She wore a tattered dress, her feet bare and muddy despite the autumn chill. But what made Daniel's breath catch was her belly, distended and swollen to an alarming size, making her thin frame look horribly out of proportion. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said softly, crouching down to her level but keeping his distance. "Are you lost?" The child stared at him, trembling. Tears had left clean tracks down her dirty cheeks. "It's okay. I'm here to help." Daniel slipped off his jacket. "My name's Daniel. Can you tell me—" "Yours?" The girl hugged her knees tighter, her eyes never leaving his face as she seemed to assess whether he was safe. Finally, her cracked lips parted. "Emma," she whispered, the word barely audible above the rustling leaves. "That's a beautiful name." Daniel smiled gently. "Emma, where's your family? Did you come to the forest with someone?" Her face crumpled at the question. She glanced fearfully over her shoulder, then back at Daniel. "Gone," she said. "Who brought you here, Emma? How long have you been in the woods?" The child's eyes welled with fresh tears. She placed one tiny hand on her distended belly, and Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "Were you hurt?" he asked carefully, dreading the answer. Emma looked at him with eyes that held too much knowledge for someone so young. She leaned forward slightly, as though sharing a terrible secret. "There were 2, she whispered. Daniel's heart pounded as the implications hit him. This child alone in the woods, with her swollen belly and those 3 haunting words. What had happened to her? Who were the 2 she mentioned? His training told him to call this in immediately. Contact the sheriff's office, child services, the hospital. But something in Emma's frightened eyes made him hesitate. She'd been through hell already. She didn't need to be surrounded by strangers and questions right now. Daniel held out his jacket. "You must be cold. May I?" When Emma nodded, he gently wrapped it around her shoulders. It engulfed her small frame like a blanket. "I'm going to help you, Emma," he promised, his voice thick with emotion. "No one's going to hurt you again." As he carefully lifted the trembling child, Daniel knew his quiet retirement had just ended. Whatever had happened to this little girl, whoever the 2 were, he wouldn't rest until she was safe and they answered for what they'd done. Daniel drove carefully along the winding road, constantly checking his rear-view mirror at the small figure huddled in the back seat. He had made a split-second decision. Instead of taking Emma to the crowded county hospital, he headed for Dr. Sarah Winter's private clinic on the edge of town. Sarah had been his wife's physician before cancer took her 5 years ago. If anyone would handle this situation with discretion and care, it would be her. "We're almost there. Almost—" "Emma," Daniel said softly. "Dr. Sarah is a good friend. She'll help us figure things out." Emma remained silent, her eyes fixed on the passing trees as though memorizing an escape route. The clinic was closing when they arrived. The reception area empty except for a young nurse gathering her things. "Daniel McCree, haven't seen you in—" The nurse stopped mid-sentence when she saw Emma in his arms, her eyes widening at the child's condition. "Is Sarah still here?" Daniel asked urgently. Moments later, Dr. Winters ushered them into an examination room, her experienced eyes quickly assessing Emma. "Hello there," she said gently, crouching to Emma's level. "I'm Dr. Sarah. May I take a look at you?" Emma glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. "It's okay, Emma." The examination that followed was handled with tender care. Sarah spoke softly to Emma throughout, explaining each step before she took it. When she reached the child's distended abdomen, her expression remained neutral, but Daniel caught the flash of concern in her eyes. "I need to run some tests," she said, turning to Daniel, "and we should notify authorities." Daniel nodded, stepping into the hallway to call his old partner, Sheriff Tom Benson. Their conversation was brief and grim. "No reports of missing children matching her description," Daniel told Sarah when he returned. "Tom's checking surrounding counties now." Sarah was preparing to draw blood from Emma's thin arm. "This will just pinch for a second." "Sweetheart," she assured her. "Will it make my tummy better?" Emma asked, the first full sentence she'd spoken since the forest. Sarah and Daniel exchanged a look over the child's head. "We're going to try," Sarah promised. "Can you tell us how long your tummy has been like this?" Emma's brow furrowed. "Since the medicine." "Medicine?" Daniel prompted gently. "What medicine, Emma?" "The bad-tasting one. For the sickness." Her small fingers traced circles on her belly. "They said I had to take it." "Who did, honey?" Sarah asked, carefully labeling the blood samples. Emma's eyes darted, though, between them, then to the floor. "Can't say," she whispered. "They'll be angry." Before they could ask more, the clinic door chimed. A sharp-featured woman in a gray suit strode in, carrying a briefcase. "Marlene Delaney, Child Services," she announced, her eyes immediately fixing on Emma. "I received a call about an abandoned child." Emma shrank back against Daniel. "No," she whimpered. "Don't let her take me." "Standard procedure, I'm afraid," Marlene said, though her expression softened at Emma's fear. "We need to place her in emergency care while we investigate." "Place her where?" "Exactly?" Daniel asked. "The nearest facility with pediatric capabilities is in Atlanta," Marlene replied, already filling out forms. "We'll transport her tonight." Daniel pictured Emma, terrified and alone among strangers, subjected to more examinations and questions. Something within him rebelled at the thought. "What about a temporary foster placement?" he heard himself asking. Marlene looked up, surprised. "Do you know someone willing to take emergency custody?" "Yes," Daniel said, his decision crystallizing as he spoke. "Me." That night, after a flurry of paperwork and provisional approvals, expedited by Sheriff Benson's influence, Daniel brought Emma to his house. He made up the spare bedroom with fresh linens and found an old teddy bear his daughter had left behind years ago. "Try to get some sleep," he told Emma, tucking her in. "You're safe here." He was nearly to the door when her small voice stopped him. "Daniel?" "Yes, Emma." "When will Lily come back for me?" Daniel turned, his heart hammering. "Who's Lily, Emma?" But Emma had already turned away, clutching the teddy bear to her chest, her eyes squeezed shut as though regretting the words that had slipped out. A name. Their first real clue. "Would you like chocolate or vanilla?" Daniel asked, watching Emma study the ice cream parlor's menu with solemn concentration. After a restless night filled with nightmares that left the child trembling, he'd decided some normalcy might help her open up. "Both," Emma suggested tentatively, as if expecting to be scolded for asking. Daniel smiled. "Both it is." The small ice cream shop on Pinewood's town square was quiet this Tuesday morning. Daniel chose a table by the window, hoping the familiar sights of Main Street might trigger Emma's memory. "Do any of these places look familiar?" he asked as she carefully licked her ice cream. Emma shook her head, then paused, studying the ornate building across the square. "The big house with the clock," she said quietly. "I saw pictures." Daniel followed her gaze to the historic town hall. "You've seen pictures of—" "In the books." Emma focused intently on her ice cream, avoiding further questions. After finishing their treats, Daniel suggested they visit the general store for some necessities, clothes, toiletries, and perhaps a toy or two. Emma walked beside him, her small hand clutching his with surprising strength, her eyes darting nervously at passing strangers. Johnson's General Store was a Pinewood institution, selling everything from fishing tackle to penny candy. As they entered, the familiar bell above the door jingled, and several shoppers turned to look. Daniel felt Emma freeze. Beside him, her grip suddenly painful. Following her wide-eyed stare, he saw a tall, elegant woman examining fabric bolts near the back counter. Vivian Carter, the matriarch of Pinewood's oldest family, church leader, and head of half the town's charitable committees. Vivian looked up, her perfectly, coiffed silver hair catching the light. For just a moment, her composed smile faltered when she saw Emma. Then, recovering smoothly, she approached them, her heels clicking precisely on the wooden floor. "Daniel McCree," she greeted warmly. "It's been too long since you've joined us at the community council." Her gaze shifted to Emma, whose small body had begun trembling. "And who is this little one?" "This is Emma," Daniel replied carefully, noticing how the child pressed against his leg, hiding her face. "She's staying with me for a while." Vivian's eyes lingered on Emma's distended belly, visible even beneath the oversized jacket Daniel had given her. "Poor child," she murmured, her voice honeyed with concern. "What happened to her?" "That's what we're trying to figure out," Daniel said. "I found her in the eastern forest yesterday." Something flashed in Vivian's eyes, too quickly to identify. "How dreadful," she said, reaching into her handbag for a business card. "The Carter Foundation would be happy to help with any medical expenses. We have a special fund for children in need." She extended the card toward Emma, who shrank back further. "I've never seen her before," Vivian added, "but I know everyone in Pinewood. Perhaps she wandered in from one of the rural communities beyond the county line." As Vivian leaned closer, Emma whispered something so softly that Daniel had to bend down to hear. "What was that, sweetheart?" Emma's eyes remained fixed on Vivian as she whispered again. "She brings the medicine that tastes bad." Daniel straightened, studying Vivian's perfectly composed expression. "I'm sorry. What did you say your foundation does again, Mrs. Carter?" "Please, call me Vivian," she replied smoothly. "We support various children's causes, medical assistance, educational programs." Her smile never reached her eyes. "If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to call." After Vivian left, Emma's shoulders relaxed slightly, but she remained unusually quiet as they finished their shopping. On their way out, a display of local history caught Daniel's eye. Photographs from Pinewood's annual harvest festivals dating back decades. In a photo from 6 years ago, he spotted Vivian standing proudly beside a harvest cornucopia, and partially visible behind her, a young woman with familiar eyes held an infant in her arms. The woman's face was obscured by water damage that had seeped into the frame, but there was something in the shape of her face, the curve of her cheek. "Do you recognize anyone in this picture, Emma?" Daniel asked, pointing to the photograph. Emma studied it, then pointed to the woman with the baby. "Lily," she said, simply confirming Daniel's suspicion. Then her finger moved to the infant in the woman's arms. "Me." Daniel's pulse quickened. Carefully, he took out his phone and snapped a picture of the photograph. As they left the store, Daniel felt eyes following them. Across the street, a man sat in an expensive black car, watching intently. When their eyes met, the man quickly drove away, but not before Daniel recognized him, James Carter, Vivian's son, who supposedly moved to Atlanta years ago. The pieces were beginning to connect, forming a picture that made Daniel increasingly uneasy. Why would Emma recognize Vivian Carter? Who was Lily? And what did it all have to do with the two Emma had mentioned in the forest? The answers, Daniel suspected, might shake Pinewood to its foundations. The hospital waiting room felt too bright, too sterile, as Daniel thumbed through a dog-eared magazine. Without reading it, after 3 hours of tests, he was growing increasingly anxious about Emma, who had been whisked away by Dr. Winters and a pediatric specialist from the county hospital. "Mr. McCree?" Daniel looked up to find Dr. Winters motioning him toward a private consultation room. Her expression gave nothing away, but the tension around her eyes concerned him. "How is she?" he asked as soon as the door closed behind them. Sarah sighed, spreading several charts and images on the desk. Physically, she's suffering from malnutrition and vitamin deficiencies. Her liver function tests are concerning, and there are indications of prolonged exposure to environmental toxins. "Environmental toxins?" Daniel repeated. "From what?" "Could be contaminated water, agricultural chemicals." Sarah trailed off, tapping a pen against one particular chart. "But Daniel, it's her abdominal condition that's puzzling us." She pointed to a scan showing Emma's distended midsection. "This shows significant fluid buildup in the peritoneal cavity. That's the space surrounding her abdominal organs. It's a condition called ascites, often associated with liver dysfunction." Daniel studied the image, trying to make sense of the shadowy shapes. Is she?" "No," Sarah said firmly, understanding his unspoken question. "Absolutely not. We've confirmed that. But something has caused this abnormal fluid retention, and the standard causes aren't fitting her symptoms precisely." She pulled out another form. "I've scheduled her for more specialized testing in Atlanta next week, but the wait list for pediatric hepatology is lengthy. In the meantime, I've prescribed some medications to help with the symptoms and improve her nutrition." Daniel nodded, relief mixing with fresh concern. "Has she said anything more to you? About who did this to her?" "She's remarkably guarded for someone so young," Sarah replied. "When I asked about her family, she just said, 'Lily went away.' And when I asked about her belly, she told me it was punishment for being bad." Daniel felt a chill. "Punishment?" "Children often internalize trauma, Daniel. They believe they somehow deserved what happened to them." Sarah's expression softened. "The best thing you can do is show her consistency and safety. Build trust. She may open up more over time." After collecting Emma and her prescriptions, Daniel drove them home in thoughtful silence. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across his yard as they pulled into the driveway. "Would you like to help me feed the fish?" Daniel asked, hoping to distract Emma from the day's ordeal. To his surprise, her face brightened. "You have fish?" Daniel led her to the small pond he'd built after retirement, a peaceful spot with water lilies and a half-dozen koi that glimmered like living jewels beneath the surface. "They're beautiful," Emma whispered, kneeling carefully by the water's edge. Daniel showed her how to sprinkle the fish food gently across the water, smiling as she giggled when the koi swirled eagerly toward the surface. "I had a fish once," Emma said unexpectedly. "A little gold one in a bowl. Lily gave it to me for being brave at the doctor." Daniel sat beside her. "Was Lily your mom, Emma?" Emma nodded, trailing her fingers through the cool water. "She went away to get better. She promised to come back." "When did she go away?" "When the moon was full 3 times. Emma's brow furrowed with concentration. "Before the snow came." "And who took care of you after Lily left?" Emma's hand stilled in the water. "Grandma," she whispered. "She said I was sick like Lily. She gave me medicine that made my tummy hurt, but she said it would make the badness go away." Daniel's phone rang, interrupting them. It was Sheriff Benson. "Daniel, I found something strange in those property records you asked about," Tom said without preamble. "That section of forest where you found Emma. The land records have been altered. Someone went through a lot of trouble to remove a cabin from the county maps." "A cabin?" Daniel watched Emma, who had returned to feeding the fish, seemingly lost in her own thoughts. "The property traces back to a shell company, but I managed to connect it to Carter Timber Holdings," Tom continued. "It's owned by Vivian Carter," Daniel finished, pieces clicking into place. How'd you know? Just a hunch. I need you to keep digging, Tom. There's something bigger happening here. After hanging up, Daniel turned to find Emma watching him, her eyes suddenly older than her years. Emma, do you know Mrs. Carter? The lady we saw in the store today? Emma nodded slowly. Grandma, she said simply. Before Daniel could process this revelation, the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed only unknown. McCree, he answered. A muffled voice responded, Leave the girl alone. You don't know what you're getting into. Some things in this town stay buried. The line went dead. When Daniel turned back to Emma, she was no longer beside the pond. He found her under her bed, drawing intently on a piece of paper, a child's crude depiction of two tall figures standing over a small one with an exaggerated round belly. Emma, who are these people in your drawing? Her crayon stilled. The two, she whispered. The ones who said I had to stay hidden until I got better. The forest seemed different today, more ominous than peaceful as Daniel followed Emma deeper into the woods. After her revelation yesterday, he gently asked if she could show him where she had lived. After initial hesitation, she had nodded solemnly. It's far, she warned, her small hand gripping his tightly. They had been walking for nearly an hour, following deer trails and occasionally pushing through undergrowth. Daniel marked their path with his GPS, noting they were moving steadily northeast toward the old Carter timber property. There, Emma pointed suddenly, her voice dropping to a whisper. Through the trees, Daniel spotted a small cabin, its weathered wood nearly camouflaged against the forest backdrop, a structure that shouldn't exist on any modern map. Is this where you lived with Lily? He asked quietly. Emma nodded, her body tensing. And then just with Grandma after. They approached cautiously. The cabin's windows were shuttered from inside, its door secured with a padlock. Daniel examined the lock, new and well-oiled, unlike the weathered cabin. I know another way, Emma said, leading him to a partially concealed cellar door. The lock here was broken, allowing them access. Inside, the cabin was Spartan but not primitive. A wood stove, a table with 2 chairs, shelves stocked with canned goods and, Daniel noted with growing unease, rows of unmarked medicine bottles. A narrow cot stood in one corner, its thin mattress covered with a faded quilt. This was my bed, Emma said matter-of-factly. I had to stay in it when it hurt too much to stand up. Daniel carefully photographed everything with his phone while Emma wandered to a small shelf holding a few children's books and a faded photograph, the only personal item visible. The photo showed a younger woman holding a baby, the same woman from the Harvest Festival picture, now clearly visible. Lily, Emma confirmed, touching the image gently. Daniel noticed a calendar hanging beside a door that presumably led to another room. Dates were marked with cryptic notations, e-checkup, and treatment day. Emma, what's in that other room? Her face darkened. The bad place where it got bigger and bigger. Before Daniel could investigate further, Emma suddenly froze, her eyes wide. Someone's coming, she whispered. The sound of footsteps crunching on forest debris confirmed her. Warning. Daniel quickly pulled Emma into the shadows behind the wood stove, a finger to his lips. Through a crack in the shutters, they watched as a tall man in expensive hiking boots approached the cabin. He tried the front door, then moved to a loose board in the porch flooring, retrieving something from beneath it. Even in profile, Daniel recognized him, James Carter. As James tucked whatever he'd retrieved into his jacket pocket, his face came into full view. To Daniel's surprise, there were tears streaming down his cheeks. I'm sorry, James whispered to the empty cabin. I should have been braver. After he departed, Daniel and Emma emerged from hiding. Emma's expression was unreadable as she stared at the door where James had been. Who was that man, Emma? The sad one, she replied. He comes sometimes and brings me books. He cries a lot. On their drive back to town, Emma suddenly doubled over in the back seat, crying out in pain. My tummy, she gasped. It's angry again. Daniel pressed the accelerator, heart pounding as Emma's cries intensified. Something was very wrong. "Hold on, sweetheart," he urged, speeding toward the hospital. "Just hold on." The emergency room buzzed with activity as nurses rushed Emma through double doors, leaving Daniel alone with paperwork and worry. He'd called Dr. Winters on the drive in, and she was already waiting when they arrived. "She'll be okay," Sarah had assured him before disappearing with the medical team. But the concern in her eyes told a different story. As Daniel completed the admission forms with the little information he had, he became aware of hushed conversations around him. Two nurses at the station kept glancing his way, their whispers just audible. "That's the child everyone's talking about, the one found in the woods. Poor little thing, did you see her stomach? Who would do that to a child? I heard she might be from one of those isolated compounds past the county line, religious extremists or something. In Pinewood? No way. Someone would have noticed." Daniel cleared his throat as he approached the desk, and the nurses fell silent, faces flushing with embarrassment. "Any update on Emma?" he asked. "Dr. Winters is still with her," one nurse replied professionally. "She asked that you wait in the family consultation room. It's more private." The consultation room was small but comfortable, with soft chairs and landscape paintings intended to soothe worried families. Daniel had sat in rooms like this before, when his wife was sick. They hadn't soothed him then either. His phone buzzed with a text from Sheriff Benson. "Carter family making inquiries about the girl. Official channels saying they want to help. Suspicious timing, watch yourself." Before Daniel could respond, the door opened. Dr. Winters entered with a pediatric specialist he didn't recognize. "This is Dr. Ramirez from Children's Hospital in Atlanta," Sarah introduced. "He's a hepatology specialist, liver diseases in children. I asked for his consultation." "How is she?" Daniel asked, rising from his chair. "Stable for now," Sarah replied. "We've administered medication to reduce the abdominal fluid and ease her discomfort." Dr. Ramirez studied the chart in his hands. "Mr. McCree, Emma's condition is unusual. The ascites, fluid buildup, is severe for a child her age, and her liver function tests show patterns that don't align with typical childhood hepatic disorders. What's causing it?" "That's what concerns us," Dr. Ramirez continued. "There are signs of both toxic exposure and potential medication-induced injury. Has Emma mentioned any medications she was given regularly?" Daniel thought of the unmarked bottles in the cabin. She mentioned medicine that tastes bad that her grandmother gave her. Said it was supposed to make the badness go away. The doctors exchanged glances. "We've taken blood samples for toxicology," Sarah said, "but it would help if we knew exactly what she was given." "I'm working on it," Daniel promised. "Can I see her?" Emma lay small and pale in the hospital bed, an IV in her arm and monitors beeping steadily beside her. Her eyes brightened when she saw Daniel. "Hey, brave girl," he said, taking her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Better now," she said. The nice doctor made the hurting stop. Daniel settled into the chair beside her bed. "I'm going to stay right here with you, okay?" As evening fell, visitors to the hospital dwindled, leaving the pediatric ward quiet except for the soft hum of medical equipment. Daniel stepped out briefly to call Sheriff Benson for an update, returning to find a hospital volunteer, an elderly woman with kind eyes, adjusting Emma's blankets. "Such a dear child," the volunteer said. To Daniel, "I brought her some juice and crackers since she missed dinner." "Thank you," Daniel replied. "That's very kind." The woman glanced down the hallway before leaning closer. "I couldn't help overhearing the nurses talking," she said quietly. "You found this child in the woods near the old Carter property?" Daniel nodded cautiously. "You should ask about Lily Carter," the volunteer whispered. "Vivian's daughter. She left town suddenly about 6 years ago. Nobody mentions her anymore." She patted Emma's hand. "Get some rest, sweetheart." After she left, Daniel pondered this new information. 6 years ago, around the time Emma would have been born, Through the open door, he glimpsed a commotion at the nurse's station. Vivian Carter had arrived, elegant even at this late hour, announcing a prayer vigil for the poor lost child and offering a substantial donation for her care. "How thoughtful," a nurse gushed. "The Carter family is always so generous." "It's the least we can do," Vivian replied, her voice carrying. "This community must come together for those in need." When she turned toward Emma's room, Daniel stepped into the doorway, blocking her view. Their eyes met, and beneath Vivian's practiced smile, Daniel saw something cold and calculating. "How is our little patient tonight?" she asked loudly enough for the nurses to hear. "Resting," Daniel replied firmly, "and not up for visitors." Vivian's smile didn't waver. "Of course, another time, perhaps." She walked away. Daniel's phone vibrated with an email from Tom Benson. The property records for the cabin had been signed over to the Vivian Carter Foundation the same month Lily Carter had disappeared from Pinewood. The coincidence was too perfect to be anything but deliberate. Early morning. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window as Daniel sipped lukewarm coffee, watching Emma sleep peacefully for the first time since he'd found her. The medications had reduced her abdominal swelling slightly, giving her some relief. His research through the night had yielded disturbing connections. After the volunteer's tip, he'd searched newspaper archives on his phone, finding sparse mentions of Lily Carter, Vivian's only daughter. According to the Pinewood Gazette's social column from 6 years ago, Lily had accepted a prestigious position in Atlanta and left town abruptly. No further mentions of her appeared in any publications. "Mr. McCree?" A nurse poked her head in. "There's a Ms. Jenkins asking for you at reception. Says it's about Emma." Curious, Daniel made his way to the lobby, where an elderly woman with silver-rimmed glasses waited, clutching a worn leather handbag. "Eleanor Jenkins," she introduced herself, extending a weathered hand. "I taught at Pinewood Elementary for 40 years before retiring. May we speak privately?" They found a quiet corner of the cafeteria, where Eleanor wasted no time. "I saw the news about the little girl you found," she said. "They're not showing her face on TV, of course, but they mentioned her age and condition." She leaned forward. "I think I might know who she is." Daniel studied her carefully. "I'm listening. I taught Lily Carter in 4th grade, and later when I became principal, I watched her grow into a bright, compassionate young woman. Nothing like her mother." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Vivian Carter rules this town through money and fear, Mr. McCree. People smile to her face and whisper behind her back." "What happened to Lily?" Daniel asked. 6 years ago, there were rumors she was involved with someone her mother disapproved of. Then suddenly, she was gone." Eleanor opened her handbag, removing a yellowed newspaper clipping. "This was never published, but my nephew works at the Gazette. The original story before Vivian had it changed." The small column announced Lily Carter's departure for treatment at a private facility, not a job opportunity. No further details were provided. Treatment for what? Eleanor's eyes flicked meaningfully toward the pediatric ward. "A month before she left, I saw Lily at the pharmacy. She looked unwell, and about 4 months pregnant." Daniel felt the pieces shifting, forming a clearer picture. "Do you know who the father was?" "There were whispers," Eleanor replied, her voice dropping further. "Some said it was a married man from church. Others suggested something more complicated. But no one knew for certain, or if they did, they weren't talking." She pulled out a small photo from her wallet. "This was at the Spring Festival 6 years ago, about a month before Lily disappeared. It was the last time I saw her." The image showed a younger, smiling Lily with her arm linked through Eleanor's, unlike the Harvest Festival photo Daniel had seen. This one clearly showed Lily's condition, the gentle curve of early pregnancy. "May I keep this?" Daniel asked. Eleanor nodded. "There's one more thing. About 3 years ago, I was hiking near the old Firewatch Tower and took a wrong turn. I ended up near a cabin I'd never seen before. There was a woman there who looked like Lily, but when I called her name, she hurried inside. I heard a child crying, but when I approached, A man appeared. James Carter. He said I was trespassing on private property and needed to leave immediately. James, Vivian's son? Yes, he supposedly moved to Chicago after college, but people have spotted him around town occasionally over the years. Eleanor stood to leave. Mr. McCree, the Carters have influence everywhere in this county. Be careful who you trust. After she left, Daniel returned to Emma's room to find Dr. Winters reviewing test results. Daniel, the toxicology report shows concerning levels of several medications in Emma's system, she said quietly, including diuretics typically used for adult heart patients and compounds often found in water contaminated by industrial runoff. Like from a timber operation? Daniel asked, thinking of the Carter family business. Exactly like that. These could explain some of her symptoms, but not the entire clinical picture. Sarah's brow furrowed. We need to transfer her to Atlanta for specialized treatment. As they spoke, a nurse entered to change Emma's IV. Her gentle manner put Emma at ease, and soon the child was chatting happily as the nurse braided her hair. My mommy used to braid my hair like this, Emma said suddenly. Did she? The nurse smiled. Your mommy sounds nice. She was. Lily made it pretty with ribbons. Emma's fingers touched her distended abdomen. Before my tummy got big and she went away. The nurse kept her expression neutral. You know, the doctors are working very hard to help your tummy. Will they have to cut it open? Emma asked fearfully. To see what's inside? I don't think so, sweetheart. They have special machines that can look inside without cutting. Emma's face crumpled suddenly. They'll find out, she whispered. They'll find out what they did. Daniel exchanged alarmed glances with Dr. Winters. Who did, Emma? But Emma had withdrawn again, turning her face to the wall. Later that afternoon, Sheriff Benson called with another piece of the puzzle. Daniel, I found something in the financial records. Large cash withdrawals from Vivian Carter's personal account, made regularly for 5 years, stopping abruptly 3 months ago. How large? Enough to maintain someone in hiding and Daniel each. Withdrawal was followed by a prescription filled at Carter Pharmaceuticals, a private pharmacy owned by the family. The prescriptions were always the same: diuretics, liver medications, and sedatives. The picture was becoming clearer and more disturbing. Whatever had happened to Emma and Lily, Vivian Carter had orchestrated it, and James, it seemed, had been involved. But why? What secret was worth hiding a child away for years, pumping her full of medications that made her sick? The answer, Daniel suspected, lay with the missing Lily Carter. 3 days of intensive treatment had improved Emma's condition enough for short walks in the hospital garden. Daniel watched her from a bench as she carefully examined a butterfly perched on a purple coneflower, her delight evident in the rare smile that transformed her face. The swelling in her abdomen had decreased slightly, though the doctors remained puzzled by her complex symptoms. Dr. Ramirez had arranged for her transfer to Children's Hospital in Atlanta the following week for more specialized care. She looks better, Sheriff Tom Benson observed, joining Daniel on the bench. He'd come directly from the station, still in uniform. The new medications are helping, Daniel agreed. But they still don't know exactly what's wrong. Tom handed him a manila folder. Maybe this will help. Found an old birth record for a baby girl born to Lily Carter at a private clinic in Nashville. No father listed. The date matches. Daniel examined the certificate. Why Nashville? Privacy, probably. Small towns have big ears. Tom lowered his voice. There's something else. That prescription trail I found? I showed a pharmacist friend the list of medications. He said that combination would deliberately exacerbate symptoms, like Emma's, increasing fluid retention and liver stress. Daniel felt a chill. You're saying someone was purposely making her condition worse? Before Tom could answer, Emma's excited voice called out, Daniel, look, a yellow butterfly. As Daniel turned to respond, he noticed Emma freeze, her small body tensing like a startled deer. Following her gaze across the garden, he saw James Carter standing by the azaleas, watching them. When their eyes met, James hesitated, then slowly approached. His expensive suit looked out of place in the hospital garden, but his face showed genuine emotion. When he looked at Emma, "Hello, little one," he said softly. "Do you remember me?" Emma regarded him warily. "You brought me the doll with the blue dress," she said. "And you cried." James swallowed hard. "That's right." Daniel stood protectively closer to Emma. "What do you want, Mr. Carter?" James glanced at Tom's uniform, then back to Daniel. "To talk about Emma." "You know her name?" Daniel challenged. "Of course I do." James knelt to Emma's level, his voice gentle. "I'm sorry I didn't come see you more often. I wanted to, but Grandma said you were busy," Emma replied, matter-of-factly. "She said you didn't want to see me because I'm sick like Mommy." Pain crossed James's face. "That's not true, He stopped himself, looking at Daniel. "May I have a word with you? Privately?" Tom nodded to Daniel. "I'll stay with Emma." Daniel led James to a secluded corner of the garden. "Start talking." "You have no idea what you're dealing with," James said, his composed facade cracking. "My mother, she protects the family name at all costs. By hiding a sick child in the woods, by drugging her." Daniel struggled to keep his voice level. James paled. "It's complicated. The situation with Lily." "Where is Lily?" Daniel demanded. "Does she know her daughter is alive?" "I can't say more right now," James replied, glancing nervously toward the hospital building. "My mother has connections everywhere, people who report back to her." "Are you threatening?" "Me? Warning you." James handed Daniel a business card. "Call this number tonight at 8 p.m. from a secure phone. Not your cell. I'll tell you everything then." As James walked away, Daniel rejoined Emma and Tom, his mind racing. Could James be trusted? Or was this another Carter family manipulation? That evening, the hospital organized a fundraiser for Emma's treatment. Donations poured in from the community, moved by news reports of the mystery child found in the woods. Daniel was touched by the genuine concern from ordinary citizens. Then, Vivian Carter arrived. She swept in like royalty, announcing a substantial donation from the Carter Foundation while insisting on privacy for all involved. As cameras flashed, capturing her charitable moment, she moved toward Emma's room. Emma had been enjoying the attention from nurses who had painted her nails and brought her a new stuffed bear. But the moment she saw Vivian approaching through the doorway, her face contorted in terror. "No!" she screamed, scrambling backward on the bed. "Don't let her take me back. She said I had to stay hidden until I was better." Security responded to the commotion as Emma's monitors beeped. Frantically, Dr. Winters quickly administered a mild sedative while Daniel blocked Vivian from entering. "I think you should leave," he said firmly. Vivian's practiced smile remained, but her eyes were cold. "This child is confused and ill. Clearly, she needs specialized care, something my foundation can provide at our private facility." "She's receiving excellent care right here," Daniel replied. "For now," Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. "But foster arrangements are temporary, Mr. McCree. The courts tend to favor blood relatives in permanent placement decisions." The threat hung in the air between them as she turned and walked away, her heels clicking purposefully down the corridor. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep, a night nurse found Daniel dozing in the chair beside her bed. "Mr. McCree," she whispered, shaking him gently. "I thought you should know. I found Emma, hiding these under her pillow." She opened her hand to reveal several medication capsules and a tiny antiseptic wipe. "She said she was saving medicine for when they make me go back to the cabin." The nurse's eyes were troubled. "She's terrified of returning there." Daniel thanked her, then carefully examined Emma's few belongings in the hospital room closet. Inside her tattered backpack, he found a torn photograph he hadn't seen before, partially burned at the edges but still recognizable. It showed Lily holding an infant Emma, standing beside Vivian and James. But unlike the formal family portrait he would have expected, James had his arm around Lily in a way that suggested far more than uncle-niece affection. Suddenly, pieces of the puzzle began shifting into a new and disturbing pattern. "We need to talk," Daniel told Sheriff Benson, spreading the evidence across the hospital cafeteria table, the torn photograph, Eleanor's testimony, the birth certificate, and the medication records. It was early morning before visiting hours, giving them privacy. Tom examined each item methodically. "You're thinking what I'm thinking?" Daniel nodded grimly. James and Lily weren't just uncle and niece. That would explain why Vivian went to such lengths to hide everything. Tom tapped the photo. Family scandal, especially for someone with Vivian's standing in the community. "I called that number James gave me, but it was disconnected," Daniel said. "Classic. Misdirection." Tom's phone chimed with an alert. Financial records just came through. Regular payments from Carter Holdings to a cabin maintenance service. Deliveries of groceries, medicine, and supplies charged to Vivian's accounts. He looked up. "Daniel, this goes deeper than we thought. Deliveries continued until 3 months ago, then stopped completely." "What happened 3 months ago?" "That's when James Carter officially returned to Pinewood, according to vehicle registrations. Prior to that, he made monthly weekend visits from Atlanta." Their conversation was interrupted by Marlene Delaney from Social Services, her face unusually tense. "Daniel, I need to speak with you," she said, glancing nervously at Tom. "Privately." Once Tom stepped away, Marlene lowered her voice. "The Carter family has filed for emergency custody of Emma, claiming blood relation." "What? On what? On grounds?" "Vivian submitted documentation suggesting Emma is her granddaughter," Marlene explained uncomfortably. "Given her resources and standing, the judge has agreed to a hearing." Daniel studied her anxious expression. "There's something you're not telling me." Marlene's professional composure cracked. "Vivian called me personally. She's on the county welfare board, my boss, essentially. She suggested my cooperation would be remembered at budget time. She's threatening your job if you don't help her take Emma." "I'm sorry," Marlene whispered. "I shouldn't have told you." Before Daniel could respond, his phone rang, an unknown number. "Mr. McCree?" a woman's trembling voice asked. "My name is Lily Carter. I'm coming back to Pinewood. Someone sent me Emma's picture from the newspaper." Her voice broke. "They told me she died. I need to see my daughter." The woman who walked into the hospital conference room bore little resemblance to the vibrant young woman from the festival photograph. Lily Carter was thin to the point of fragility, with premature lines etching her face and eyes that had witnessed too much sorrow. "Is she really alive?" were her first words to Daniel, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Daniel confirmed gently. "Emma's receiving treatment upstairs." Tears spilled down Lily's hollow cheeks. "They told me she died from her liver condition 3 years ago. I've been mourning her all this time." Before Daniel could respond, Dr. Winters entered with urgent news. Emma's condition had suddenly deteriorated. The specialists were baffled by her rapid decline. "She was doing better," Daniel protested. "What happened?" "We don't know," Sarah admitted. "But we need to transfer her to Atlanta immediately." Emma lay pale against the hospital sheets, surrounded by beeping monitors that tracked her fragile vital signs. The medical helicopter that would transport her to Atlanta's Children's Hospital was en route, delayed by an unexpected storm. Daniel stood at the window, watching lightning split the darkening sky while Lily sat beside Emma's bed, holding her daughter's small hand as if it might dissolve into mist if she let go. Their reunion had been bittersweet. Emma recognized her mother but remained cautious, as though afraid to believe Lily was real. "She looks just like I remember," Lily whispered. "Except for..." Her eyes lingered on Emma's distended abdomen. Daniel turned from the window. "Lily, I need to understand what happened. All of it." Lily's gaze remained on her sleeping daughter. "I was 22, working at the family foundation after college. I never meant for any of this." Before she could continue, the door opened. James Carter stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his expensive coat, a stuffed rabbit clutched in his hand. His eyes locked with Lily's, and something electric passed between them. "You came back," he said, his voice breaking. "No thanks to you," Lily replied coldly. "You told me she was dead, James." "What?" James looked genuinely shocked. "No, I was told you abandoned her, that you didn't want to be found." Daniel stepped between them. "Enough. I've got evidence connecting both of you to Emma's condition, and to that cabin where she was essentially imprisoned. One of you better start telling the truth, or I'm calling Sheriff Benson to arrest you both right now." James sank into a chair, the fight leaving him. "We never meant for Emma to suffer. You have to believe that." "Then why is she lying here, fighting for her life?" Daniel demanded, careful to keep his voice low enough not to disturb Emma. "Because of my mother," James said, meeting Daniel's gaze directly. "And because I was too much of a coward to stop her." "James," Lily warned, "think about what you're saying." "I'm done hiding, Lily." James turned to Daniel, his shoulders straightening with resolve. "Emma is my daughter. Not my niece, my daughter. Lily and we fell in love. We're not blood relatives. Lily came to us as a foster child when she was 12, and my parents adopted her later." Daniel recalled the photograph, the way James had held Lily. But Vivian considered it a scandal. Mother is obsessed with appearances, with the Carter family reputation. When she discovered Lily was pregnant, James shook his head. "She sent me away, told everyone I'd taken a job in Atlanta. Then she sent Lily to a private clinic, promising we could be together after the baby was born. But instead she hid Emma at the cabin," Daniel pieced together, "and kept you separated." Lily spoke up, her voice stronger. "She told me Emma had a congenital liver condition, inherited from my biological family, said she needed specialized care and isolation. I was allowed to stay with her for the first 2 years, but then what? I started questioning the medications, the isolation, so Mother had Lily committed to a rehabilitation facility," James continued. "Told her it was for postpartum depression and substance abuse, conditions Lily never had." "And you let this happen?" Daniel asked incredulously. "I visited when I could, brought Emma books, toys." James's voice faltered. "Mother convinced me Emma's condition was deteriorating, that she wouldn't live long. I believed her because it was easier than fighting." Dr. Winters entered the room, her expression grim, as she reviewed Emma's latest test results. "We've found something concerning," she said. "Emma's blood shows traces of compounds typically used to induce symptoms like hers. Someone has been deliberately making her ill." James paled. "The special medicine Mother insisted she needed. But why?" Daniel asked. "Why make her own granddaughter sick?" "To keep control," Lily whispered. "As long as Emma was sick, she had power over all of us." News travels fast in small towns, and by morning, whispers of the Carter family drama had spread throughout Pinewood. As Emma stabilized enough for transport to Atlanta, the hospital corridor outside her room bustled with activity. Sheriff Benson arrived with search warrants for the cabin and Vivian Carter's home office. Daniel briefed him on James and Lily's revelations, watching the veteran lawman's face harden with each new detail. "We've got her on medical neglect at minimum," Tom said, reviewing Dr. Winters' report. "The medications in Emma's system match those prescribed through Carter Pharmaceuticals." "Will it be enough?" Daniel asked. "Vivian has influence everywhere." "Not everywhere," Tom replied, a determined glint in his doing some things even the Carters can't bury. As they spoke, Eleanor Jenkins approached with several other longtime Pinewood residents, former employees of Carter businesses, church members, neighbors, people who had watched Vivian's reign of influence for decades. "We've come to help," Eleanor announced. "To tell what we know." A former gardener described seeing Lily at the cabin during the early years, appearing increasingly distressed. The church secretary admitted removing records of Lily's youth group participation at Vivian's insistence. A retired doctor confessed to signing medical forms without proper examination because no one says no to Vivian Carter. Each person carried a piece of the puzzle. small observations that, when assembled, revealed a pattern of manipulation and control that had trapped Emma in a hidden life. Meanwhile, Lily sat beside her daughter, sharing no stories of their early days together, memories Emma had preserved despite everything. James watched from across the room, his face etched with regret. "I want to help make this right," he told Daniel. "Whatever it takes." "It starts with your testimony," Daniel replied. "Everything you know about your mother's actions." James nodded, resolute for the first time since Daniel had met him. "I've been afraid of her my entire life. Not anymore." Dr. Winters entered with specialists in protective gowns, final preparations for Emma's transport. As they carefully adjusted her IV lines and monitors, Emma opened her eyes, looking directly at Daniel. "Will you come too?" she asked, her small voice cutting through the medical bustle. Daniel moved to her bedside, taking her hand. "I'll be right behind the helicopter in Tom's police car. We'll race each other to Atlanta." A ghost of a smile crossed Emma's face. "I'll win." "You always do, brave girl." As the medical team prepared to move her, Emma suddenly gripped Daniel's hand tighter. "I remembered something important," she whispered. "About the two." Daniel leaned closer. "What is it, Emma?" Her eyes, wise beyond their years, met his. Steadily. "The two who hurt me, they didn't want anyone to know I was alive." Something in her phrasing struck Daniel. Not did something to me, but didn't want anyone to know I was alive. The distinction seemed important, though he couldn't yet grasp why. As Emma was wheeled toward the elevator, reporters gathered outside the hospital, drawn by rumors of the Carter family scandal. Standing before the cameras, Vivian projected calm authority, announcing her foundation would fund Emma's specialized care at an appropriate facility. But the facade was cracking. Former staff members approached. Reporters with stories. Hospital volunteers shared observations. The dam of silence that had protected Vivian Carter for decades had finally broken. By evening, Sheriff Benson had executed his search warrants, uncovering medical records and correspondence that confirmed what they'd suspected. Vivian had deliberately isolated Emma while administering medications that worsened her condition. "But I still don't understand why," Daniel said, reviewing the evidence in Tom's office. "What purpose did making Emma sick serve?" "Control," Tom suggested, as long as Emma needed special care that only Vivian could provide. She kept power over James and Lily. "It's more than that," Daniel muttered, the pieces still not quite fitting. "There's something we're missing." His phone rang. Dr. Winters calling from Atlanta with an update. Emma had arrived safely and was undergoing comprehensive testing. "The specialists have a theory about her condition," Sarah explained. "They believe she may have a treatable form of liver dysfunction that was deliberately exacerbated by inappropriate medications." "Will she recover?" Daniel asked, the question that mattered most. "With proper treatment and time, yes. She has a good chance at a normal life." Relief washed over Daniel. But before he could fully absorb this news, Sheriff Benson received an urgent call from his deputy at the Carter estate. "Tom," the deputy reported, his voice tight with tension. "You need to get over here now. We found something in Vivian's safe. Medical records dating back 6 years. Genetic testing for Emma as an infant." "What kind of genetic testing?" Tom asked. "Paternity confirmation," the deputy replied. "And sir, the results aren't what anyone expected." The family court was smaller than Daniel had imagined, an intimate setting where life-altering decisions were made in hushed tones rather than dramatic proclamations. 1 week after Emma's transfer to Atlanta, her improved condition allowed for a preliminary custody hearing. Daniel sat beside his attorney, watching as the various parties took their positions. Vivian Carter arrived impeccably dressed in conservative blue, projecting the image of a concerned grandmother. James entered separately, his expensive suit replaced by a simple button-down shirt, a deliberate attempt to appear genuine rather than privileged. Lily sat near the front, her fragile frame bolstered by newfound determination. Judge Harriet Simmons, a stern woman with 30 years' experience in family court, studied the case file with methodical precision. This is a preliminary hearing to determine temporary custody arrangements for the minor child, Emma, she announced. Given the unusual circumstances, I'll hear brief statements from all parties before making my decision. Vivian spoke first, her voice steady and practiced. Your Honor, I've only ever wanted what's best for my granddaughter. Emma was born with special needs that required specialized care I provided when others couldn't or wouldn't. She cast a meaningful glance at James and Lily. I may have made mistakes in how I handled the situation, but everything I did was out of love for that child. The Carter family estate stood like a fortress against the fading daylight, its manicured grounds betraying no hint of the secrets hidden within. Daniel parked beside Sheriff Benson's cruiser, steeling himself for what might be his most difficult confrontation yet. Vivian had requested this meeting after the preliminary hearing, a private discussion at the original Carter homestead on the edge of the family property. Despite his attorney's warnings, Daniel had agreed. He needed answers that only Vivian could provide. You came alone. Good. Vivian emerged from the shadow of the old stone house, her usual polished appearance slightly disheveled. The events of the past weeks had taken their toll, even on her. You said you had information about Emma's condition, Daniel replied, keeping his distance. Something you've never shared. Vivian gestured toward the house. Inside, what I have to show you isn't for casual observation. The interior of the old homestead surprised Daniel, not the museum-like preservation he'd expected, but a functional space with modern medical equipment alongside antique furniture. Filing cabinets lined one wall, and a desk held multiple prescription pads. My father was a doctor, Vivian explained, noticing his interest. I grew up watching him treat patients who couldn't afford hospital care. This was his examination room. And you used it for Emma, Daniel realized. When necessary. Vivian moved to a filing cabinet, retrieving a thick medical folder. What do you think happened, Mr. McCree? That I'm some villain who locked away a child for amusement? I think you hid Emma to prevent scandal, then kept her isolated by convincing everyone she was too sick for normal life. A convenient narrative, Vivian scoffed, but utterly wrong. She opened the folder, revealing medical records. Emma was born with hepatic complications. 3 specialists confirmed it wasn't treatable, that she wouldn't live past her 3rd birthday. Daniel examined the records, noting legitimate hospital letterheads. If that's true, why hide her away? Why not get her proper treatment? Because of who she is. Vivian's composed facade finally cracked. James isn't Emma's father, Mr. McCree. The revelation hung in the air between them. The paternity test, Daniel remembered. Your deputy found it in Vivian's safe. Emma's father is my husband, Charles Carter. Vivian's voice hardened. He was 67 when he began. His relationship with Lily, a girl he'd raised since she was 12. My husband, my adopted daughter. Daniel absorbed this shocking twist, his mind racing. So you hid everything to protect your husband? To protect the Carter name, Vivian corrected. Charles died of a stroke 2 months after I confronted him. James, always the loyal son, agreed to claim paternity to shield the family from scandal. And Emma? What about her right to proper medical care? I provided everything the doctors recommended for palliative care, Vivian insisted. When she outlived their predictions, I consulted other specialists. The diuretics were prescribed to manage her ascites, the fluid buildup. Yes, I kept her isolated, but only because exposure to infections could have killed her. As they argued, Daniel suddenly connected final pieces: the cabin's location near the old timber operation, the contaminated water Emma mentioned, and her mysterious symptoms. The water at the cabin, he said. It was contaminated with chemicals from your family's timber business, wasn't it? Vivian's silence was confirmation enough. Emma doesn't have some congenital condition, Daniel continued. The truth crystallizing. She has liver damage from environmental toxins, toxins your family's company dumped for decades. and the medications you gave her made everything worse. You can't prove that, Vivian said, but her voice lacked conviction. The two who hurt her, Daniel quoted Emma's words. She didn't mean abuse. She meant abandonment, being hidden away, treated like a shameful secret. The two who didn't want anyone to know she existed. Without waiting for Vivian's response, Daniel gathered the medical records and headed for the door. This information could save Emma's life by guiding her. Treatment in Atlanta. Where are you going? Vivian demanded. To help Emma, Daniel replied simply. Something you should have done from the beginning. Golden morning light spilled across Daniel's backyard as Emma carefully patted soil around a young tomato plant. 6 months had passed since that fateful day in the forest, transforming both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. Is this deep enough? Emma asked, her face serious with concentration. Perfect, Daniel assured her. Remember to leave space for it to grow. Emma nodded, her expertise already impressive for a 6-year-old. The garden had been her idea, growing new things, as she put it, and Daniel had eagerly supported the project, turning a corner of his yard into a flourishing vegetable patch. The changes in Emma were remarkable, with proper medical treatment for her liver condition and freedom from the harmful medications. Her body had healed steadily. Her abdomen was now normal size, her cheeks full and healthy, her eyes bright with curiosity about the world she was finally free to explore. Dr. Winters approached from the patio, carrying lemonade on a tray. She had become a regular visitor, her professional interest in Emma's case evolving into genuine friendship with both her and Daniel. The garden looks amazing, Sarah said, setting the tray on a nearby table. You two have quite the green thumbs. Emma beamed with pride. We're growing tomatoes and carrots and flowers, the flowers. Don't feed us, but Daniel says they feed our hearts. Very wise, Sarah laughed, exchanging a warm glance with Daniel. The custody arrangement had worked out better than anyone expected. After reviewing the medical evidence Daniel discovered at the Carter homestead, Judge Simmons had granted him permanent guardianship of Emma, with structured visitation rights for both Lily and James. Lily, continuing her recovery program, visited weekly, slowly rebuilding her relationship with the daughter she'd been separated from for so long. James, too, had found a place in Emma's life, his genuine remorse and commitment to change, earning him supervised visits that grew less restrictive, as he proved himself trustworthy. Vivian Carter had faced the consequences of her actions. Not criminal charges, as the evidence proved insufficient, but social rejection and the collapse of her carefully constructed empire of influence. The Carter Foundation had been reorganized under new leadership, with its first major project being a children's health clinic for rural families in the county. The investigation had also revealed widespread groundwater contamination from the old Carter timber operations, leading to an environmental cleanup initiative that would benefit the entire community for generations. Daniel? Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She stood before him, a smudge of dirt on her nose and a small potted sunflower seedling in her hands. This one's special. Can we plant it by the pond? Of course. He followed her to the koi pond, where the fish now recognized Emma and swam eagerly to the surface whenever she approached. As they knelt together by the water's edge, Emma carefully removed the seedling from its pot, her movements deliberate and gentle. You're getting very good at this, Daniel observed. I like helping things grow, she replied simply. After they planted the sunflower, Emma remained beside the pond, watching the fish with contentment. Daniel marveled at her resilience, her ability to embrace joy despite everything she'd endured. Daniel? She said after a while, her voice thoughtful. Yes, Emma? Thank you for finding me. She looked up at him, her eyes clear and direct. You're the one who stayed. The simple truth of her words touched something deep within him. Daniel had spent years after his wife's death withdrawing from connections, convinced that loss was the inevitable outcome of caring. Then Emma had appeared in the forest, challenging him to risk his heart again. Thank you for finding me, too, he replied softly. As the afternoon sun warmed the garden, Daniel watched Emma arrange stones around her newly planted sunflower. In helping her heal, he had found his own healing. In providing her a home, he had rediscovered what makes a place truly home. Sometimes, Daniel reflected, the greatest rescues go both ways. This child had taught him that it's never too late for new beginnings, for second chances, for putting down roots and growing something beautiful where nothing grew before. And as Emma's laughter joined the chorus of birdsong in the garden, Daniel knew with certainty that some stories don't end when the darkness lifts, they begin.